everyone to our first National Action Dialogue. We are going to be talking today about community-based programming in the COVID-19 age. I'm Molly Immendorf. I am the lead design manager for e-extension, and I will be facilitating our conversation today. I'm going to talk to you about everyone who's involved in our national dialogue today. There are you, the participants. You're here to co-create ideas and ultimately work to problem solve solutions about the issues that are of utmost importance to all of us right now. We also have a panel of 3 panelists to spark our ideas. They are going to talk about community-based programming in the COVID age from 3 unique viewpoints. I'm your facilitator to guide us in our discussion, and we will also are supported by e-extension tech support, and a couple of my colleagues, Ashley Griffin and Megan Hirschman, are going to be helping capture the our large discussion dialogues and the panelists' ideas. So we're all here together to capture our collective wisdom, to inspire each other to think innovatively, and to focus on new opportunities, partnerships, solutions, some tangible actions and collaborations that will help us now, but also will be in place beyond the public health crisis that we are all facing right now. So the way this is structured is we're first going to have our panelists speak to us and give us ideas and perhaps expand our thinking around the different issues related to community-based programming in this public health crisis and beyond. And then we'll have a chance to share from our own perspectives the ideas and issues that are generated from hearing what our panelists have to say and our own experience. Then we'll have a chance to break into small groups to help prioritize the different issues that we're all facing. And in those small groups, you'll have the opportunity to select 1 or 2 issue ideas to move forward that then we will use in our part 2 next week to get to problem solving and action planning to help move us all forward. So we are joined today by 3 of our 4 panelists planned. Just to let you know that Elise Lofgren is unable to join us today. She's feeling under the weather. Apparently it's not COVID related, but nonetheless, she's not feeling up to joining us today. So we will be joined, however, by Chuck Hibberd, the Dean and Director of Nebraska Extension, Paul Hill, Extension Associate Professor, County Director, Community Economic Development for Utah State University, excuse me, and Doug Edlund, Assistant Director of Operations, University of Tennessee Communications, and the current ACE President. I'll turn it to you, Chuck.
The instruction to work remotely. Now, Nebraska is not locked down. We are not a shelter-in-place state. I know some of you are, and that certainly impacts the way we do this and the way we operate in this space. But I think it's true for all of our employees. We have families, we have children, we have spouses, we have parents, schools are closed, and things like that that create amazing challenges for us in this space. Our initial instructions for our folks were to move everything online. And you know what, after a couple of days of thinking about that and trying to figure out how we do that, we're backing off that a little bit and trying to think more holistically about what it means to work remotely. So we want our folks to grow their online skills, but not everyone has that skill right now. We don't want people to panic. We also know that not all of our clients have access. And then the third point that I think is important, we don't need every one of our 250 extension professionals in Nebraska each creating one new product a week. That would just, flood the market for these kinds of ideas. So one suggestion for all of us is, let's think long ball, right? What should we be working on today in concert with your program team or collaborators that's going to be really important on, you name the date, September 1, whatever. It could be delivered virtually, could be delivered perhaps in person, whatever. The point is, let's play long ball on this and not get trapped in the day-to-day stuff. Secondly, we asked our folks to really sustain clientele engagement. And third, to really focus on professional development. So as we think about this, we think about a couple of things. One is, how do we continue to be intentional in this working remotely space? So what does demand look like, right? And it's not going to be as easy to do our needs assessments and things like that. So one of the things that I would suggest that we think about is to go back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? We have people that are just really, really stressed about food and shelter. They're having trouble accessing food, when to go to the store, when to buy, those kinds of things. Can we provide good information on those things? One of the things that's interesting to me is that our food.unl.edu website, our flagship website on food, visits went up 50% in 1 week. And so we know people are interested in these things. Another Maslow hierarchy, safety. People are concerned about infectious diseases and pandemics and COVID-19. We know we're not the subject matter experts in Nebraska, but we're working with our local health departments and trying to amplify their messages using our social media networks. And then there's the love and belonging piece. And, extension is about trust-based relationships, phone calls, FaceTime, fieldwork, letters, all those different ways that we can stay connected with people, with our partners and collaborators. Fostering social events. One thing that's interesting in Nebraska right now in our rural communities is cruise night is coming back. Now they're all driving up and down Main Street, right? I hope their windows are up, but they're honking at each other and having a good time. And I'm hoping all those auto fumes kill the COVID-19 virus. Another recommendation that we have is to during this time, to really work hard to stay on top of emerging issues, whether that's online, maybe driving around, networking, doing some field visits, those kinds of things. But we also know there are going to be some timely topics. And so how do you convert that pruning workshop to some kind of an online strategy that we can market? We also think a lot about learner engagement. How do we engage learners no matter where they're at, what their learning style might be? One of the fun things that I think to think about is, an online Zoom environment, for example, can be more than just the Zoom environment, right? So we're doing living room learning and boredom buster challenges for youth in Nebraska. And it is a Zoom presentation, but it challenges them to, in their living room at home, create something, do something, make something, build something. And we're also going back to the learning circle model that e-extension helped us create some years ago. We also think about access as an important issue, and I'm concerned, I think we're all concerned, that we don't just cater to only those that have internet access, right? So what other ways can we use to engage people in this setting? And so one of the things I think about is when I worked at Purdue, we had the PICS program. It was a cowpea storage project in Nigeria and a number of Central African nations. And one of the things that we did was create really short videos, 2 to 3 minutes, that could be played on a cell phone. And that was a really, really effective way to get bites of information out to people. One of the last things that I wanted to mention as I wrap up my comments is we all have a county partner, right? If we work in a county, we have a county partner. And our county partners want to know what we're up to and if their continued investment in us is worth that investment. And so a couple of thoughts for you as you think about that. First of all is we would encourage everybody, unit leaders, to connect and to explain in partnership with your extension board president to keep people in the loop. And I know this can be hard in rural America where some people may not buy into what we're doing. So we've developed some messaging, and I'll just share this messaging with you, and then I'll put it in the chat so others who might want to consider using this type of messaging can do so. The first message is the University of Nebraska has asked us to work from home. That's a fact. The second message is we are committed to being available and responsive, and will continue to engage clientele, our clientele. And then third, we will communicate with you regularly to answer your questions and resolve issues and concerns. And then at the end of the day, we do need to continue to regular report what we're doing. So a couple of quick closing thoughts. My advice to all of you during this really complex time, do the best you can, right? Marshall Stewart said it yesterday, our people do need you now, but they're really going to need you when we all come out of this, right? When we get back to some semblance of normal, they're really going to need us. So take care of yourself now. Secondly, reach out to others and stay connected. This is really important, one of Maslow's hierarchies. And then third one, give yourself some grace. We're not going to be perfect at this. We're going to work hard to try and figure it out, but give yourself some grace. So Molly, that's what I wanted to share with everybody today.
Thank you so much, Chuck. That was wonderful. I keep trying to remind and talk to other people and say, be kind to yourself and to everyone you're with. So I hear that loud and clear from your message. Turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Molly and Chuck. It's good to be with everybody. I'm scanning through. There's 14 different pages of pictures and names, and so it's really neat to see the faces of people that I follow on Twitter and the work that I'm interested in. But it's good to be here and to talk a little bit about this somewhat of a disruption to our lives. I think just a few weeks ago, everything was normal, and then all of a sudden we are remote workers and homeschool parents, and you name it. There's been a lot of disruption to what our routines are, and a lot of times I hear about people refer to uncertainty, and the truth is that everything's uncertain. We're kind of kidding ourselves if we think that we're in control. About 2 years ago, we in Utah came together and based on a statewide needs assessment, looking at some needs of rural Utah, and thought, hey, we could start teaching people in rural Utah how to work remotely, to telework, and really close that gap. And so we were provided funding from our legislature to pilot a program. And after 2 years, we received ongoing funding to expand this program throughout the state. And so we're teaching the best practices of remote work. And what's interesting is how this all of a sudden became a need. And so we were kind of just trying to help support rural and the needs of rural, and the fact that, during the Great Recession, we lost the majority of the jobs in rural, and that those jobs returned, but in urban centers. And so how can we kind of balance and spread the prosperity in Utah across the state? And little did we know that this would become a nationwide issue and opportunity. And so right now we're working to support working professionals. Majority of anyone who does some sort of knowledge work is working from home, as well as people who are leading remote teams. And so some of the things that the biggest change would be the fact that we're moving from an environment where our leaders manage for presence over performance, or if they can see what we're doing, then they know that we're working. And so it's been difficult for leaders to adjust to be able to trust. And I like to remind leaders that if you can't trust them to work from home, why did you hire them in the first place? We all know, and we can all attest, that extension is not a 9-to-5 job. And I know for myself, between the hours of 6:30 and 8:30 a.m. is when I get the best work done, and I don't do that from the office. And so first, it's trusting our employees, and then moving from I guess the expectation of synchronous communication, and whether that's face-to-face or virtual. So right now we've synced up, we're synchronous. If I have a question or if I need something, I can get a response immediately. And that there's an expectation that if you ask me a question, that I'll respond. But moving to asynchronous communication and a way of working actually unlocks hidden productivities and flexibilities, and in a way to that allows everyone to adjust their lifestyles accordingly. So the fact that you put in your time each day in the time that works for you, that allows you to be with your family and walk the dog and do some exercise. And if that means doing yoga from 3 to 4, so be it. It's not something you would do in your office, usually from 3 to 4 in a synchronous environment, but it allows you the freedom to adjust your day. And now we're all in that space. And from the literature, the thing about remote work is that leaders often think, well, how am I going to know that they're working if I can't see them? And the truth is, and all the studies have been that employees work more hours, and that they view this opportunity to work remote as a privilege. And because they view this as a privilege, and it is a privilege, the fact that, we couldn't have done this 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. And because they view this as a privilege, what they actually work harder, they work longer. And so as a leader of remote workers, the concern shouldn't be, are my people working? The concern should be, are my people okay? Do they know that I trust them, that I should ensure and check in with them and let them know it's okay just to work a regular day, and I don't expect the extra hours, and to be concerned about burnout, and to be concerned about isolation. That's a big thing in mental health, and trying to address that is critical. And so leaders should be looking at the forefront, looking. I like what Chuck said. I mean, we have to kind of see around corners. And so after this is all done, telework is going to be a huge part of our lives, and if it hasn't already been. And so looking around the corner to all of this, we need to look at how are we going to lead out, become experts on remote work, and help others adjust to the new normal. That's going to be critical, just as remote working professionals, but also helping leaders who are leading remote, instantly leading 5, 10, 100 remote employees that are maybe in their community or around the world. And so setting up boundaries is critical, but setting up, now is a good time for virtual office hours, and figuring out how to use and really become proficient at Zoom, at WebEx, at Slack, at Basecamp, and all the other apps. Now's the time. We have the time. Let's use it wisely and do our absolute best to become remote work professionals, so that we can then teach our clients about the new normal and way of working.
Paul, thank you so much. Being a 100% remote worker, I can attest to the working harder and working at different hours. And you actually need to start also, in the caring piece, but, self-care, and make sure that you're setting boundaries too, so that you're not, doing it at crazy times too, or a crazy amount. I'll turn it over to Doug.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Molly, and thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today. I hope I can add something to the conversation. I'm approaching this from a little different perspective. I work in a communications office at the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, and I'm also the president of the Association for Communications Excellence. So I'm kind of looking at this from two different lenses here. One from an organizational standpoint from within a university, and then from a perspective of being in charge of a international professional development organization that has members at a number of land grants across the country, and how we work together to collaborate to bring around our communications. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background of what we do at UTIA. And one of the things that we do is that we produce television stories that run on local network affiliates within Tennessee and in a couple of national outlets like it used to be US Farm Report, but we're running on RFD TV. We run on Ag Day Television, which is in 180 markets across the country, and our reporter's name is Charles Denny. So we approach this from a news background, and as COVID-19 has started to, really ramp up, we are all working from home like everyone else is. And in fact, our television production has pretty much ground to a halt at this point. We did produce 2 COVID-19 related stories. One was on social distancing and how you can use the outdoors as a way to get away and get some fresh air and, get out of the house, but still maintain, your social distancing. And the other was working on, how do you feed kids from home? The kids are home, everybody's home. How do you do it? And we talked about that and information that people can relate to and that they can use. And we have a YouTube channel, UTIA. If you want to take a look at it, those stories will be on there. But we also release stories as well that were about cattle AI and just different agricultural related stories as well, because we understand that while this is very, very important information to come out, people do need a break as well. They do need other information, and they probably want to get a break from COVID-19. So since our television production has kind of ramped down at this point, we have started to really, and we have in the past as well, relied on our social media channels, podcasts, YouTube, and other ways to get information out from our specialists. And we're working very, very closely right now, especially with our family and consumer science communications and information specialists to get that information out to people that they are going to need. So we use multiple social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, we use Twitter, we use YouTube. So those are our 4 big ones that we use. And we also, with our podcast, we have a show called Bringing It Home, which is done by our family and consumer science agents that are in Jackson, Tennessee. And they produce this show, and they do it every week, and it runs on UTIA podcast, UTIAG podcasts. You can find them on Apple Podcasts. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on Stitcher. They're all over the place. But they relate to items as well as, how do you deal with this now from home? And basically one of the issues has been, hey, I got to help my kids learn. How do I do that? So they are approaching it from that perspective. I've got to feed my kids. How do I feed my kids but still give them nutritious meals, especially if I have to, really stock up on food? What are ways I can do that? And another thing that Sarah and Tennille, they're producing Bringing It Home, they produced Bringing It Home breaks. And these are little 5-minute videos that run on Facebook. And then they put them on the Madison County page. We repurpose them to the UTIA page. We put them on Twitter. And this is, again, little quick, interviews with people who are extension professionals and getting information out to people in what we call bite-sized content that they can easily understand and easily digest. So we're looking at multi-pronged approaches to get information out to people. And it's just been, I found very, very successful for us to get this information out. It's really been helping. Social media is a place where there is so much bad information out there right now. And if we can do as extension professionals, not just at UT, but at all of our universities, work our best to get credible, precise, research-based information out there, it's going to help get through some of that clutter and some of that noise and help hopefully override some of that clutter and some of that noise out there. I also wanted to talk a little bit about ACE. ACE is the Association for Communications Excellence. I'm lucky, well, in a way lucky to be president in one of the most challenging years ACE has had with COVID-19. We've had to recently cancel our conference. We are going virtual. That's going to be very interesting because we've never done this before, but I think it'll be a challenge and an opportunity for us to grow as communicators. And I do approach all of what we're doing here personally as a big professional development exercise in communications and in crisis and issues management. So I'm trying to approach how we're dealing with it from that lens as well. But what I would want to suggest with ACE, I'm sure a number of you, there may even be ACE members on this Zoom call. I can't see everybody on my screen. I can see about 9 tiles on my iPad. But I would really highly recommend that you reach out to your communications offices and work with the people in those communications offices to get information out. We are always looking for content to develop. We are not the content developers, we're the content producers, and we repackage and distribute content. So I would really highly recommend that you reach out to the professionals who work in those offices. If you have ACE members, what we are doing in ACE right now is we are starting a series of webinars that we are doing every Wednesday that are COVID-19 related, and how we are working as communicators to help get the word out about COVID-19 and how we can get extension-based information out. And I find that as a communicator, we can't work in a vacuum. We have to collaborate, and that's extremely important in our line of work. Creativity, communication, it doesn't happen alone. You have to work with other people. Collaboration is key to getting out your successful messaging. And so that's what we're doing in ACE, and we're having series of webinars. In fact, next week we're having a webinar on April 2nd with Faith Peppers, Frankie Gould, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, Edwin Remsburg, and they're going to talk about crisis communication in the COVID-19 age. And what we're doing in ACE is, we used to do these webinars, they were mainly a member benefit. But when it comes to information like COVID-19, we make these available to as many people as we can. We do not charge outside of ACE if you want to view one of these webinars. So we want to look at this as bringing in people from other universities. What are you doing? How are you doing it? You know, what are you doing that we might not be doing? That's what I look at as collaboration. I look at collaboration in ways that you bring in other people, you know, who can, you know, benefit your weak areas, for example. And ACE, another example of collaboration in ACE, is that we are good in communicators, but we don't have a lot of techies. There's an organization called NETSI, which is full of techies. So we're trying to do a lot more cross collaboration with NETSI. NETSI's blind spot is that they need more social communications. They need more soft skills and communications. Well, ACE can offer them that. So we always look for areas in somebody who we can benefit, but can also benefit us. So I think that's the key to collaboration in this new way of communicating. Reach out to other universities, reach out to other communications units, reach out to communications professionals in ACE. We're here to help you get your message out. We are not content creators. We are content distributors. And it's just very, very important to work together, that we all work together to get our messages out. And I just wanted to echo as I wrap up my section, and I hope this isn't too much rambling on my end, but I just want to ramp it up with what repeat what Chuck said earlier. You know, we're all really working hard. In fact, Monday for me I was home, but it was still a Monday, and it was crazy here. So give yourself some distance, give yourself a break, you know, just, you know, we're all working harder. We're all working in new territory here, but be sure to also take care of yourselves as well. And be sure to give yourselves, you know, that space so you can do your job better to help inform other people. And I'll turn it back to you, Molly.
Doug, thank you so much. You know, education is communication, communication is education, right?
Right.
And the fundamental thing that we are all about as cooperative extension professionals is getting that evidence-based information, education out to the folks who need it when they need it, right? So I just loved how you brought us back to the very core of what we do, no matter what seat we sit in as a CES professional. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll reshare my screen so we can pull up a couple of guiding questions. So you've heard from three panelists, Chuck, Paul, and Doug, who each from where they were sitting gave some great advice and thoughtful guidance of maybe how we can think more broadly about the issue of community-based programming now that we're in this public health crisis, and to think beyond, to think longer. But I'd like, as a group, as our large group, we have 263 people on with us at this moment. Think about what you heard and share either in the chat or pick up the mic, you know, turn on your video and unmute to let us know what challenges or barriers might come our way and how should we meet those challenges. And what do we need to do to create change on this issue? So one of our planning team members, Brad Gerlach, and I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, talked about broadband access for the staff when they're not in the office. And I know broadband access is an issue in many of the states, especially in more rural areas of the states. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and I know the rural areas of Wisconsin have broadband issues as well. Oh, good, they're coming in. So there was some early on, I noticed in the chat there were some tool suggestions of the the remote tools that those of us who are using beyond Zoom today. And Crystal says we need to keep track of all of them and where to find them. The connectivity came up, how to stay engaged with our users. Let's see, adjusting programs to meet the current pressing needs of the communities right now during the crisis. Danielle from Cornell says the internet and even cell access. So it's again that access issue. Thinking, Tamara mentions that some of the things that we do don't translate well into virtual methods. And so, how do you rethink that? Learning curves and mindset changes, Steve mentions. Let's see, Marlene, how do we create interconnectedness, a sense of community when limited with virtual connections? Volunteers, so how do we look beyond the professionals into the volunteers that we are training as well as staff? Again, access is coming up again and again. Let's see. When we go back to normal, and I like that Megan mentions normal in quotes, because what is normal, right? I saw a meme a long time ago that said that's just a setting on the washing machine. But how are people going to develop the sense of belonging and team? Let's see. Oh, some of the worries about people who have not good intentions for or getting in. They're called Zoom crashers for the Zoom pieces, or but there you can see that in Twitter and some of the other social networks as well. Let's see, unequal access to digital tools. I'm going to scroll down. We've got a lot of great suggestions in here. Jimmy mentions, how are they really engaged, right? So that you're not feeling like you are just talking at people, like, keeping that engagement going. We've got some more tools. And that steep learning curve of trying to learn all the tools while using them. We think of that as flying the plane while learning how, building the track while driving the train down the track as well. Reach and access. And Paul suggests that we start thinking about using some of these tools that have closed online communities as well, so that we don't have the trolls coming in. Sifting through the tech options. You all have got Zoom bombing. That's the Zoom crashing, Zoom bombing. That's that ill intent. Here's one from Zhang. Hard to do a farm call, such as a plant disease diagnostic. How can you do that virtually, even though it's not that easy on site? I think too, I've heard specialists having, who are have dual appointments, who might have research projects going on as well. And the trouble of being able to keep those going. GP reminds everyone about universal design to make sure that we're reaching everyone. And for many of us, that's a learning curve as well. And let's see, inequities, the income. I know Mark mentions the loss of income to maintain staff, and will people pay for virtual programs? And this is one of those things too that you can try it out, experiment, think, try something small, see what happens, and learn from that to see if people will come and will pay and how much they'll pay. All of that, let's see. I'm having a hard time keeping up with everything. We've got so many ideas coming forward. Let's see. So we have the ability to use and build maybe new communities and think beyond the location of community, but also think about similar interests and topics and build community from there as well, and use the digital tools for that. Sarah asks, how do we keep the 4-H clubs and volunteers engaged and supported? So that's that engaged piece again, and making sure that that is happening. Let's see, we've got, so Brian says that Melissa said something really well, and I think I missed where Melissa said, so let me see, evaluating outcomes. So again, we don't want to lose sight of making sure that we are being deliberate and measuring outcomes and looking for impact that we're doing, and learning from each piece that we do, and bringing that in, and then being able to learn from it, and incorporate the learnings into the next time that you're doing this. This is all, in one respect, well, life is, as Paul mentioned in his talk, that we have an illusion of control, right? And so it's all really one grand experiment, and we can break those down into smaller experiments as we're going. Let's see, Jennifer suggests, that she's actually having her 4-H volunteers do short videos on how-tos, right? So that gets it. Do I hear someone who wants to take the mic? So we will take the chat, everything that the folks have been adding to our chat, and we will add this to the record of this so that we don't lose it. And I'm really excited about this wonderful breadth of ideas and thoughts and questions that you all are generating in the chat right now. We're going to take a step back from this, right, and allow you all to join small groups in order to continue the discussion. And before we move into our small groups, I do want to acknowledge that we based today's session on a model that was first piloted and done at the last May's National Urban Extension Conference in Seattle. It was called Leading Edge Dialogues, and we had in-person similar facilitated discussion with panelists on a variety of important big issues to do this. So by taking that model, our planning team, which included Brad Gorlock from Washington State University, who was on the planning committee for those leading edge dialogues in the conference last May, and Lindsay Shirley from Oregon State University. Also Fred Schlut, who is one of our e-extension catalysts, as well as our CEO, Chris Guy. The executive director of ECOP, Rick Clemmy, was a part of the planning team, as well as Ashley Griffin and Mark Locklear and Aaron Wybe. And that team actually helped make this this available and thought we could scale it. And it's really great to be able to scale it virtually as well. So with this, we are now going to move to our next piece, deliberate, right? So this is a small group exercise. We're going to randomly put you into small groups using the Zoom feature. And in your small group, you're going to discuss one question. What needs our immediate attention going forward? And there are, in your, for every breakout, there is one Google Doc for you to record what you're doing. And I have the link up here right now. I can put this into the chat as well. But we're going to ask you to look for, once you're in a breakout, you'll see you're in breakout room 10 as an example. You would look for the Google Doc that starts with the number 10. And then, and there are instructions in the Google Doc of how to work in this guiding question. We're going to have about 20 minutes to work in our small groups, and this will help us prioritize the issues that we all have been discussing and have been brought up. So with that, I am going to ask Mark or Aaron to break us into small groups.
Okay. All right, folks. You should have anywhere from maybe 7 to 10 people in each of your groups. And I'm clicking the open rooms button now. So in a second, you should reappear with, again, anywhere from 7 to 10 people in your group.
So hopefully you had a good conversation, met in smaller groups. And I see some shout outs that group 5 in particular feels that they were just awesome. And I think group 10, you know what, give yourself shout outs. Let's go for it. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, look at this. And you know what? You now have perhaps some new people across the nation to ask questions of, and have as your kitchen table, for ideas to bounce them off of. So I love it. I absolutely love it. This is great. So you all, I'm so glad. You know what? Leslie just mentioned this is the first time she'd ever used a breakout room in Zoom. So, and that's one of the reasons why. So Zoom has different features. I'm just going to do a little Zoom thing. Zoom has different features and different kinds of rooms you can have. So a meeting room is what we're in right now. And in a meeting room, you can do the breakout rooms with them. If you have access to a webinar room, the webinar rooms don't allow you to do breakout rooms, but even the free version of Zoom meeting rooms have the breakout tool available to them. So so it's worth definitely checking out and trying out on your own. So I am so glad that you guys sound like you were all quite productive. Now it's time to share. And I'd love it if you would pull up the mic and for whoever was deemed the recorder, and we'll go in group order. Okay, so starting with group 1 and up until the last group number that we have. So, and I think I saw 28 might have been the highest number, but if there's one higher, we'll go there. So group 1, what needs our immediate attention to move forward?
Hello, this is Megan. I just put in chat what our group discussed, but we kind of came up with 3 because we thought they were extremely important areas. One of them is inequitable distribution of resources within our organizations. Not everyone has the same things at home. So we're all getting the same messages from our universities and from our extension hierarchy of what's expected of us, but not everyone has the same access to technology and to high-speed internet and to data and to a home and a safe environment and a regular meal and all of these things that we're expecting everyone universally across the university to be producing in very non-traditional environments. So that was the first one, is inequality. The second is employees feel like if they don't do something, they look like they aren't doing anything. So instead of being, reflective and thoughtful and trying to do some maybe long-term planning, it's all about being reactive. And how do we get organizations to support kind of across the spectrum working, that it doesn't just have to be reactionary at this time, that we could be maybe a little more thoughtful. And then a third area that everyone said, yes, we have anxiety over this, is particularly, it came up in California, but I think this is going to come up across the country, is that we're unprepared for friends, family, colleagues to actually be getting sick and dying. And that's something that, it's a pandemic, and it's kind of this ubiquitous thing out in the world. But the reality is we are going to know people if this pandemic reaches the numbers that they say that it can. We may all know someone who could potentially die from this. And so how do we support, each other and have real conversations about what that looks like and support our families as well.
Group 1 and Megan, thank you for sharing those. I'm going to give you a pass for giving us 3 because you went first. But for time, we really are going to need to stick to 1 to share with the group verbally. And there's an opportunity, I'm going to put this into the chat again, to share in a spreadsheet the top ideas that the issues that your groups came up with. So, so with that, group 2. Who's the reporter for that?
Hi, everyone. My name's Chelsea Corkins. I'll jump in unless our leader wanted to kind of jump in. We really just ended up with me taking notes, which is quite all right with me. Our 2 that we broke it down to would be prioritizing needs, really that immediate shift of seeing problems come up that maybe weren't problems before, but that are new problems for our clientele. Really seeing that reordering of prioritization. That's really a big thing that, like I said, really prioritizing where are our needs and knowing that some of those are outside of what our traditional programming is. How do we adapt to that quickly? How do we know that what we were going to provide in 1 week is no longer relevant information? And then the second would be our communication shifts. As mentioned before, how do we get things out to people in a timely manner, particularly those who don't have internet? And then also this one, but a little bit more into the longer term, but something that our immediate reactions could certainly influence is how do we keep our volunteers engaged and leading? It's great that our specialists are putting out so much material, but for organizations like mine, 4-H, Master Gardeners is another good example that many of us have. We are so volunteer-led. How do we continue to engage them and let them know that they are valued, and that what our new normal is, they're also going to be valued there as well. So those would be our top 2 things. We jotted some of those down in that master sheet as much as I could find topics that they aligned with. So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And group 2. So group 3?
This is Jennifer Alexander. I took notes for group 3 so I can also report out Our group also mentioned reprioritizing to meet the current needs of our existing audiences. I think the other priority we had that hasn't been mentioned yet is most immediately needing to maintain and then sustain contact with the audiences who previously we engaged with exclusively face-to-face in captive settings like a K through 12 classroom.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Group 4.
So I think we were group 4, and I think we probably failed the assignment miserably. We mostly just kind of chatted and brainstormed about a 4-H project. So
4-H was a priority.
Well, for one person, we'll just leave that there. We'll try to do better on the next one.
It's good. There are opportunities for you all to add to this, and I'll talk about that as we close up today. Group 5.
Hey guys, this is Brian from University of Georgia Sea Grant. Yeah, we start talking about resources and realize every one of our states are at different stages and that it's a moving target. But one of the things we talked about, just even the technology of reaching out to our current clientele. So just even like this, using the breakout rooms, just giving us possible trainings for us to be better at doing this distance learning, so that we can then share that with our clientele. Someone had given the example of working with school teachers and being able to or master gardeners, sorry, teaching that. So yeah, improve training on actually how to use some of these distance resources for us to better reach out to our clientele.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. We're going to try to go as quickly as we can and get as many as we can in the next 5 minutes. But rest assured, we're not going to lose anyone if we didn't get to your group. Okay, so 6 and then 7 and then 8.
So our group talked about being strategic about where we're heading. So knowing what our goals are, and so that both in deprioritizing what we previously had, and then also just being strategic about heading forward.
Thank you. 7 and then 8 and then 9.
I don't hear anybody. 7 yet. There we go. There she is. Thank you.
Okay. So we had several things that we had listed, but I think our biggest thing that we all agreed on was it's hard right now because we don't know what we don't know. It's hard to say what our biggest need is when everything is constantly changing, it seems, on a daily basis, and we're just trying to keep up. So it's hard to say what our biggest need is at this time.
Thank you. 8, 9, and then 10.
I'll speak for 8 since we actually had a good conversation, but we didn't pick a reporter. So I'm just going to jump in for group 8, if that's okay for group 8. Group 8, by the way, was great. Everything that everyone else has said so far, we covered too, except for 2 points. One is dealing with uncertainty. How do we deal with uncertainty? We talked about trying to rebuild our toolbox in this virtual age and still connecting with other people. And then we talked about balance. Some people are having too many Zoom meetings. Other people are not having any Zoom balance or any Zoom meetings. So finding that balance as we're in this state of, I don't want to say chaos, but this state of uncertainty. So working with that. Thank you. I'll go back to mute now.
Thank you. I see there's thank yous and amens to what you said. 9, 10, and then 11.
I'm Randy Musser from University of California Cooperative Extension, and Zoom group number 9. We talked a lot about the difference availability of skills and technology. I live in an urban place. I work with master gardeners. Not a lot of them are really comfortable with technology. Emily is a 4-H person from Wyoming, and they use the technology all the time. One of the things, so there's that that disparity between skills and what's available, including some places don't have internet connectivity. But one of the things that she mentioned that I thought was poignant was the fact that, you know, there's all these, they're doing all these Zoom meetings, but there's all these kids that are being videoed and then the recording gets saved. And how do you manage this new world and consider all these, you know, have all these things to consider in the new world. So thank you.
Thank you. 10, 11, and then 12.
Hi, my name is Shire. I'm reporting for Group 10. So thank you to everyone who's in Group 10. We had a great discussion. One of the things that we talked about is our immediate attention going to continuing to be a leader and providing accurate information to our clientele. And then also we talked about the need to not panic and to stay calm and to continue to do our best. So those were the two things that we prioritized.
Fabulous. 11, 12, then 13. That's probably all we can do.
This is Lisa. I'm from Michigan State University up here in Metro Detroit. We had a great group, and I want to give a shout out to Morgan, Elaine, Susan, and Carla. We are all in states that are shelter in place right now. We also were comprised of 4-H and SNAP Ed extension personnel. And so our biggest issues that we talked about, which we didn't talk about what's going on with us, we talked about the clients that we serve. And so we're really concerned about accessibility to food and meals for those youngsters, even though they're, you know, people can drive by and pick them up. We don't know if the youth and those families are actually getting the food. We also are very concerned for their safety and providing resources for those who are in abusive situations. Parents, you know, kids were in school and the teachers were to be to take note and to see what was going on. And right now our kids could be in places of harm. We don't know about it. We can't control it. We don't know if they're eating. So we're taking a step back from programming, because programming is nothing if the kids aren't safe. It goes back to, I think Elaine said, the hierarchy of needs.
Absolutely. And I think we have time for one more. I think we're up to 12.
Hi, this is Cheryl from University of Vermont, and nice job, Group 12. And there were a number of specifics that came up in different program areas, but I think the unifying theme was needs assessments internally and externally, and responding now to what is needed on people's teams and in the clients we're serving, with a disparity of access to resources.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And I see that Group 13, Max put in his groups, and then be sure to make, you can put them into the chat, but also into this Google sheet, and we will sort these to try to identify the top issues. Thank you all so much. I cannot express how wonderful it has been to hear what the small groups have been talking about. And again, that link to the sheet is right here. Let me tell you about what's coming up. Okay, so this was part 1. So remember, this was generating and sifting, sifting through the ideas, having that opportunity to network and meet with each other. Next week, on same time, same Zoom room, we are going to meet as small groups to create actionable next step plans for the top issues identified today, okay? And there will be additional folks, actually some of the folks who were in some of the groups this time are going to be coming back next week and act as what we call key informants, or folks to pop into the small groups and ask questions and maybe give a little advice based on their expertise and where your group is going. We need from this group volunteers to be issue leaders. Okay, so we will identify what are the issues that we all came up with, sort through those, but then for next week, we're going to need issue leaders to lead the small group activities. And also, as you saw, we need to have reporters and note takers as well. But the majority of our time together next week will be about creating problem solving and solutions oriented and action oriented as well. So in the meantime, what's happening in between is going to happen on connect.extension.org. This is a brand new resource available to all cooperative extension professionals that eXtension has put together. We call it the National Hub for Professional Development, Learning, and Collaboration. So we're going to have a recording from today's session. We're going to perhaps add some more guiding questions and help keep the conversation going, especially for those colleagues that are here today, but also those who couldn't make it today, that we want them to be able to join into the conversation. We're going to have links to all the Google Docs that we have been generating today, the notes, the chat, all of that are going to be in there. We're going to have the ability to sign up for Part 2 issue groups, and I'd like you to tell me whether you're willing to volunteer to be an issue group leader and which issue, and we will also email that out. But that is going to be available in connect.extension.org, and I highly recommend that you all go to connect.extension.org to see all of the great resources that are available there as well. And in closing, I just want to thank you and to thank everyone from our panelists who shared insights to our planning team who helped navigate, helped plan what was going to happen and how we were going to do it. I also want to thank our tech support and our note takers and our wranglers. And most of all, I want to thank at the height of this, we had almost 300 people who participated live today in this session. And I think we have found a new community amongst us. And I thank you. So with that, I will say goodbye. Till next time.